You can see objectives of this video on screen. At the end of this video, you will be able to describe what is ALV IDA, explain processing of classical ALV and ALV IDA, describe features of ALV IDA, compare classical ALV and ALV IDA, describe restrictions of ALV IDA, and write programs using ALV IDA. What is exactly ALV IDA? IDA stands for Integrated Data Access. It is an optimized technique for ALV in which we can use code pushdown technique for ALV functionalities. In order to understand how ALV IDA works, it is important that first understand how classical ALV works. What is classical ALV? Classical ALV is nothing but ALV on top of ECC, the one which we are using currently. So what happens in case of classical ALV? We have some database underlying ECC system. We fetch the data from database in internal table. We do the further processing in internal table and finally display the output of your report in ALV format. So in ALV screen, you can see one page of data. Now if you click on page down button, the control goes back to internal table. The next set of data is retrieved from internal table. Now if the user clicks on sort button in ALV, the control goes back to internal table. Sorting is done within internal table and we can see the output on the screen with sorted data. That means in classical ALV, all the ALV operations are handled in internal table. This is how classical ALV works. What happens with ALV IDA? In ALV IDA, we have HANA database. We fetch the data from database and directly display the output in ALV format. There is no internal table in between. So now you can see one page of data on ALV screen. If you press page down, the control goes back to the database. Next set of data is fetched and you can see the next page on the screen. Now suppose if you press sort button in ALV, the control goes back to the database. Sorting is done within database and you can see the result on the screen with sorted data. That means we are doing code pushdown of ALV operations in case of ALV IDA. Or we can say that ALV functionalities are pushed down to underlying database in case of ALV IDA. Obviously, because of which we can get better performance with ALV IDA compared to classical ALV. Here are some more features of ALV IDA. What happens in ALV IDA is only selected data is displayed on the screen. That means at a time you can see only one page of data on the screen which is fetched from the database. That means memory consumption is limited to only one page of data. Data extraction operations are delegated to the database and data declaration of data types, that is authorizations or ranges or any other complex data handling, is delegated to the underlying database. As a result, what is the experience? Obviously, the data extraction is much faster because we are handling directly with the database. Memory consumption is limited to only one page. The selected data is not truncated, which happens in case of classical ALV, especially when you have a column with a long text, then many times you can see the data is truncated in classical ALV, which doesn't happen in case of ALV IDA. And one more important feature is if you are using ALV IDA on top of HANA database, then the special features of HANA database like text analysis and fuzzy search are also available in ALV IDA. So even though you can use ALV IDA on top of any database, but it is optimized for SAP HANA database. So you can use ALV IDA in SAP GUI or in ADT or in Floor Plan Manager or also in WDA. So here is the comparison between classical ALV and ALV IDA. There are different parameters for the comparison. The first parameter is data retrieval. How the data is retrieved in classical ALV, it is from internal table. In case of ALV IDA, the data is retrieved from underlying database. Data contents, all the data is stored in internal table in classical ALV. In case of ALV IDA, only visible data is fetched from the underlying database. That means only one page of data is fetched from the database at a time. Round trip. In case of classical ALV, round trips happen between internal table and ALV. That means application layer and presentation layer. In case of ALV IDA, round trips happen between underlying database and the presentation layer. ALV functionalities. In classical ALV, ALV functionalities are handled within internal table. In case of ALV IDA, those are handled at database layer. That is, code pushdown happens over there. Memory consumption. In case of classical ALV, memory consumption depends on the size of the internal table, whatever records you have in internal table. In case of ALV IDA, memory consumption is limited to one page of data. Speed, obviously, in case of classical ALV, if the records are more, then you can see that the speed is slow. In case of classical LV, if you have really huge number of records, then you might face timeout error. In case of LV IDA, that doesn't happen. Since HANA database has a capacity to handle huge amount of data, that is why you can see better speed or better performance with ALV IDA. However, there are some restrictions with ALV IDA. The first restriction is handling of data change during data display is not supported. That means you cannot have editable ALV IDA. Obviously, because we are displaying live data from underlying database, it is not possible to change that live data, and that is why we cannot have editable ALV IDA. Another restriction is data display is restricted up to maximum of 2 billion cells. 2 billion cells is quite a huge number, so you can still display huge number of records through 2 billion cells. If you are using a field of type string, then it cannot be used in ALV IDA. You cannot do the calculations and aggregations on top of currency or quantity fields as of now. Say for example, if you have a currency field and you have different currencies in that field like USD or EUR, GB, INR, etc. and you want to perform some calculation on top of it. In that case, you will have to first convert all the currencies into one single currency and then you can perform calculations. So converting different currencies into one currency, this functionality is not available in ALV IDA as of now, and that is why you cannot perform calculations or aggregations on top of currency or quantity fields. Handling of data removed during display are filled by empty lines. That means suppose two users are using the same system. One user is displaying the data through ALV IDA and another user is trying to edit the same set of records. Now this second user, suppose that user deletes some records from the same set of data. Then what will happen for the first user? The first user who is trying to display the same set of data through ALV IDA, that user will be able to see blank lines in the output. The last restriction is ALV IDA programs cannot be scheduled as a background job. Why it cannot be scheduled? Because we are displaying live data from underlying database, it is not possible to schedule it as a background job. With all these discussions, I am sure you will be definitely interested to see what is the look and feel for ALV IDA. So here you can see new ALV IDA screen. And you can see that as of now, there are limited buttons in ALV. So SAP says that they are working on this and in future they will be adding some more buttons for ALV IDA. Now how to write ALV IDA programs? As we are discussing that ALV IDEA is mostly used on HANA database, and all the features of HANA, all the functionalities of HANA are based on OOAB. For ALV IDEA, SAP has come up with a standard class, that is CL-SALV GUI table IDEA. And under this class, they have come up with different methods. First method is a create method, which will help you to display the data from any database table. It may be standard table or a custom table. One more good thing is through ALV IDEA, you can display the data from your CDS view or from external view also. So if you want to display the data from your CDS view, here is a method create for CDS view. And there is another method DB capabilities, which you can use for additional functionalities in ALV IDEA. The way we have two methods or two ways in classical ALV to display it in full screen and with container. Similarly, ALV IDEA also can be displayed using two ways, full screen and with container. However, in case of classical ALV, full screen method is used with function module and container method is used with OOAB. But in case of ALV IDEA, for both the ways, you have to use classes and methods only. So if you want to write your own ALV IDEA program, then SAP has given us a standard package SLV IDEA test, under which they have given us a list of standard programs for different ALV functionalities. So you can have a field catalog in ALV IDEA, you can have interactive ALV, you can also use select options in ALV IDEA. So SAP has provided us different standard programs with different functionalities. You can refer to this package, you can refer to this list of standard programs and write your own ALV program. You can also refer to the next ALV demo videos, in which we will help you to write actual ALV programs. So all the best, and please go ahead and start writing your ALV IDEA program.